where am I in the grand scheme of where my life is going? And although I can only imagine, sometimes I like to forecast where I'm going, empower myself with meaning. And I started to see these things as layers of my life. And I couldn't resist seeing these layers like the rings in a tree that represent each year of its life, like a fingerprint. It's our personal blueprint that shows us the plan for our future, how our personal design is going to be engineered. And although no two fingerprints are alike, many of us do share commonalities. So if you're the lone wolf type, the introverted, neurodivergent, complex trauma healer, whatever you refer to yourself as, or simply a mystic, someone who prefers solitude, stillness, symbolic language, poetry, and silence. You sure are someone who likes to see through the veil, see what's behind there, what's underneath, what lies ahead. So these 5 layers I'm about to go through might help you see the path, give you a vision for where you're headed to, if you're not there already. And as a mystic, it's likely you're going to feel the shift of that layer before it's even been named. Now, the first layer of this life for people like us is typically 20, even 50 years worth of challenges, grief, mistakes, highs and lows, masking and people pleasing through it all. Going at it blindly, thinking you know so much, but really you don't know shit. This is the time when all of our foundation is being built, our coping skills are being learned, and we're really just doing our best to figure everything out. But if we were to see those 20 to 50 years as the wide, dark circle in the middle, you would see what an impact it's made on us in our life. Meanwhile, what a dark shadow it can leave us with. We might even see some cracks, and we could see those as memory loss, seizure, major illnesses, and trauma that interrupt the growth. But those cracks, as you see, do not interrupt the growth. They're there to provide character and uniqueness to who we are. Because all these experiences are what mature us, identify us, and give us all the ability to keep standing through all those storms. We gain a bit of courage and interest and curiosity of what else the world has to offer. And so we go about entering into creating the second layer. The second layer is that time to grow outside of those limiting beliefs that kept us tough and rigid, restricted and conforming. The second is a freedom from all the rules, expectations, false perceptions, and that could be a good 10 to 20-year escape. It's a time when you do all the things you were never allowed to do before, or the things you never gave yourself permission to experience yet. And that might be breaking free from relationships that no longer serve you, or entering into ones that taught you what freedom was really all about. It could be stepping away from jobs that no longer empower you, or entering into positions that gave you your first taste of autonomy and personal success. Over these 10 to 20 years, you took a leap of faith maybe to travel alone, turn your side hustle into a full-time passion, and have the free will now to be the main character of your life. And you might be in your 40s when you finally enter this layer, but you feel like you're 25 again. As you near the end of this second layer, you've reached the pinnacle of therapy. You've entered into a deep practice of self-care, self-help, maybe even self-medicating, and full-on self-liberation. Life has been all about the doing, the figuring it all out. Maybe it was about doing for parents, doing for your partner, doing for your kids, doing for the corporations, the societal expectations, doing it to prove to yourself that you could. But as layer 2 comes to its fullest growth potential at this level, you realize that doing isn't the answer. You know that eventually the doing has to come to an end. It's like you've run out of things to do. The reserves of energy you've been running on are about to enter a drought. It's like the cortisol dump is about to end. The constant dopamine hits are about to run out. And then comes layer 3, And no one's quite prepared for this layer. But if you were to look back on the growth of layer 2, you'd be surprised to see how much smaller it is in comparison to the growth that you're going to experience in layer 3. And what naturally has to follow such activity without a whole lot of soul growth, although some might disagree, but the experiences of doing do not always result in the soul evolution of your being, not like what will take place in the 3rd layer, which is characterized as the rest, the slowdown, the shutdown, the demotivational, decelerated era. Maybe almost at or just past the 50-year mark, it appears that this is an end because this part seems boring. It seems like a failure. It feels completely unproductive. What you must remember is this: mushrooms, they attain their full power in a night. But oak trees, they require decades. You are an oak. The oak tree represents strength, endurance, power, wisdom, stability, resilience, and longevity. You might be thinking you should be living the way you did the last 10 years. But now it's time to settle into the 3rd layer. The 3rd layer of healing allows everything to be solidified. All the layer 2 lessons and empowering experiences are being programmed into the system now. Layer 3 is what allows its integration. Thinking layer 2 is the end all be all, you've done it all, you made it, you broke free from the matrix. Remember, it's not, because it was still based on doing. Layer 3 is all about integration, and whatever it is that you resist will persist. Now, there are still 2 more layers yet to go. So embrace layer 3, which you'll know you've hit because you're over there thinking you lost your mojo. You failed. You've hit rock bottom. But instead, level 3 is about letting go and floating to the surface. Once you allow that release from doing and accepting the soft, slow era, you're soft and healed, integrated, chill, regulating the nervous system era, that's all that there is. You've done it. But you haven't. Now, before we get into those last 2 layers of what comes after the slowdown, let me illustrate this for you in a little bit of a different way. Layer 1, you can understand as the entry layer of all mystics. Even though you're a wise soul, you're still a naive human. Layer 1 is the caterpillar, consuming, surviving, getting stepped on, getting back up, going at it over and over again. This is the matrix years, the conditioning years. You played the roles. You were a character in someone else's movie. But imagine the movie of your life was being played in front of an audience right now, and everyone in that audience was a 5th layer version of you. Even though you don't know what that level is just yet, you can imagine. What would they be shouting at the screen? Maybe it was to get out of this rat race, give up on what you think is important, chase your dreams, take those risks, and be your own person. And so you do it. You enter layer 2. Layer 2 is the liberation era. All the things you never gave yourself permission to experience, doing all the things everyone warned you about or were too afraid to do themselves. Not to prove anything, but because you knew you could. And probably you did need to prove it to yourself. There's a joy, a reclaiming of power, a radical state of personal empowerment. Layer 2 is the butterfly. Flying, exploring. And I know, well, what about the cocoon in the middle? Well, let's just say you skipped that part and went from caterpillar right to butterfly. As you started to see yourself, it became much clearer how much time alone you actually needed. So the next layer that got slapped on was intense solitude. And that's where layer 3 comes in that I just left you with. This is the cocoon. You might not be going anywhere like you used to. This is the deep healing layer that looks boring, that looks like you've given up. But you just given up all the energy it was taking you to heal, and now you're here to let it settle and digest. This is the most important layer that you're building, but also the most complex and requires the most patience. It's a very slow time. If you try to speed things up, you'll find yourself burnt out and forced into rest again. And you can't give a timeline to how long this layer takes to complete its cycle. You're leaving the butterfly era to go into being a hermit? This is where many of us feel lost. You're leaving the doing mode and learning how to actually be. This is the still, quiet being just for the sake of being. And with being, there's a lot of nothing. The audience is still in their seats, invigorated from your butterfly era. It might have also been the time in your life when you had the most people around you at once. They saw you go through layer 2 of midlife crisis to some, full authentic expression to others, but now the curtain is closed. And there's a very long intermission before you come back on the screen. So slowly the audience starts to leave, one by one. And it looks like you're all by yourself with no one watching you or validating you anymore. There's no one cheering you on or giving you any advice. And the truth is that you don't need that anymore. So if layer 3 feels boring, stuck, and confusing, that's fine. That's how it's supposed to be. Layer 3 is the wake up with no plan. It appears on the outside that nothing's happening, but inside, a new embodied state is being established. You have to have the patience to trust the process, which is why layer 3 is also the layer of self-compassion. That's why there's no timeline for how long this takes. Doing the inner work in the cocoon is also learning how to be a loving parent to your inner child. They've been ignored for a little bit too long with all you're doing. The longer you abandon them, the longer it takes them to come out of this cocoon. But it's not your inner child that wants to hide. It's you that's hiding from having to do the work. And that's the work that happens once it gets really quiet. Quiet enough so that you can hear the sound of how you're really feeling. The truth of your emotions come up to the surface now for you to tend to. The key to moving out of the third layer and into the fourth is when you stop arguing with this emptiness. You're not fully ready to emerge, but you are ready for a new energy. And that's when layer 4 will be ready for its timeline. Now remember, layer 3 can be as big as layer 1 and 2 combined. This is a time for major expansion. And you'll know that it's happening because you feel yourself enter into this fourth layer that might be invisible to the eye, but highly sensed by the universe. It might be this salient silence. And the audience might be back, but the movie isn't looking like it used to. They're wondering, did we come into the right theater? Because now it's just the soundtrack that's playing 432 hertz, gentle wind, illusory images and shadows. You're not a ghost, but it can feel that way. Your life is no longer for viewing. It's for sensing. There's no performance. It's just an essence. They might say, she's changed. I don't understand this anymore. I can no longer relate to this life she's living. Layer 4 is what I will refer to as interpersonal embodiment. The way you would hold and respond to a baby becomes the way you hold and respond to your own feelings. While you were in layer 3, you may have thought that the only way out was if you could have a deep connection with someone else. But the truth was that that deep connection was with yourself. And while you were in that freeze state of the cocoon era, your hermit mode, there was very little physical movement, but an enormous amount of interpersonal growth. Now, with the fourth layer, intentional and mindful movement is paramount to your daily routine. And it's not to get anywhere or be anything other than an opportunity to maintain the connection with yourself as a mindful practice. This also isn't the time for a new hustle or a new adventure. It's the capacity to live as you are wherever you are. Wherever you go, there you are. You no longer need something more to be more. You're as real as it gets. Just being here is the point. Now you're in a place of attracting what's for you instead of chasing down what you thought you wanted. This is the whole essence of being. Metaphorically, layer 4 is like a winged stillness. The butterfly who no longer flies and flits. She just rests on flowers and pollinates with her presence. That cocoon opens, but the butterfly doesn't fly out on another adventure. She's still. She went in there as an adventurous being, but has emerged to just be. Layer 4 is this realm where you no longer need to be known, except to be known to yourself. You understand that you're already connected to everything. There's no loneliness, just all oneness. And you're like a stone in the river, unbothered by the water's current. You're like this sea blowing in the wind, not planting yourself, but just letting life plant you where you're needed. You might wake up with no plan, but still be more productive than ever. You'll speak way less, but say way more. You'll be mistaken for doing nothing while learning all the while that the best way to do something is by doing nothing. Nothing is something. This is when your body finally becomes the new home for your soul. You can finally settle in with yourself without always feeling the need for change or feeling not good enough unless you're doing something to accomplish something. Life is no longer a performance. Now you see it as a portal. It's like this dance that takes place, but there's no movement. There's no music. It's just this effervescent energy, a mystical essence that is felt even more by you just being yourself. Now, layer 4 sounds pretty good. It might seem like where it all ends. But this is where the wisdom of the lone wolf enters. You may have been operating from a young wolf mentality for a while. You might have been a lonely wolf, but now you're just a loner. And maybe not even a wolf anymore. You're just a true mystical creature, all right? But one that can only be defined by you. Everyone may have re-entered the movie theater at this point to see if there's a new scene playing. Maybe they're expecting a calm, euphoric ending. She's at peace. She's still. She's healed. She's a grounded presence. She's left the lone wolf wounds behind and stepped into her own identity. But this is where it gets exciting. This is now the unexpected plot twist at the end. What might seem like a surprise ending to some is just the beginning. This is the return to innocence, out of the cocoon into a still presence, and now as a paradox. Things are about to move much quicker in this 5th layer coming up because now you have acclimated stillness. While you were busy with all the doing, the things that were meant for you couldn't reach you. Now, what is meant for you has this vast openness for landing. You've cleared the space and you've given the time for its safe arrival. Layer 5 is a full circle return. It's the post-hero's journey homecoming. You're not doing soul work anymore. You are the soul. Life on autopilot is officially over. And if there is a secret to layer 5, it's this. There's no striving. There's no resistance. There's no identity left to defend. Remember how everyone walked out in layer 3 when it was silent, dull, seemingly too boring for some, and maybe even for yourself? Whoever was still around in layer 4, those are the real ones. But more than that, layer 5 is when a new audience appears. These are the ones that are interested in this new energy you've been cultivating. Because these are the ones that have been there already for a while in this 5th layer. And they've just been waiting for you. I imagine this 5th layer like an evolutionary experience in real time. Because the performance is over. The need to be something you're not is done. Layer 5 is when the mask feels like it's no longer available. You look back and you didn't realize how much performing you were actually doing. But now in the 5th layer, you're finally the real you, your fullest expression, whatever that is. But It's beautiful and true freedom. So, as a recap, remember, layer one is that caterpillar, learning how to navigate the world through masks, rules, inherited beliefs. You had created safety, but not authenticity. You lost your core self by having to fit in, please, and perform. Layer two, the butterfly. You learn that you're allowed to choose. You learn the importance of autonomy. You learn that you're the main character. Your life doesn't have to be small. But you still overcompensated through rebellion and out-of-the-box exploration that still consumed quite a lot of energy. But the thing is that you had it at the time to expend. Layer three revealed that maybe you still don't know who you are, or that all of that exploration still didn't honor your real truth. And that's okay. This is now the cocoon. You learn that stillness is necessary. Non-action is action. You learn that this growth was also a time of grief, a time to grieve the former version of who you thought you were. You learn that this resting time is a time for realignment. Layer four was interpersonal embodiment. You learned how to honor yourself without having to explain it. You learned presence. You learned that there was something else on its way for you now, which is why you had to create this space and stillness to welcome it. Layer five is the return to who you really are. You learn that whatever you experience is now without performance. You have to be still so that what is meant for you can find you. And it does, and it will.